Sudan, one of Africa's biggest countries, formally gained independence from the British in 1956. Independence was quickly overshadowed by a constitutional crisis between the Islamic Arab regime in the north and the large non-Arab, non-Muslim minority in the south, which resulted in two drawn-out civil wars that lasted over 20 years. The subsequent humanitarian disaster cost the country over 2 million lives, and 4 million refugees were forced to flee their homes. Refugees fled to the north to escape the atrocities, and large refugee camps were rapidly established on the periphery of Khartoum. Displaced persons were accommodated in cardboard, straw and sack housing. Sometimes entire families resided on only 6 square meters. With no secure water supply, abysmal hygiene, no adequate food supply, no work, no privacy, very few gave thought to the luxury of education.
The government would not accept our children. Schools from the south were not relocated, so that when we came here, education became a problem.
The government was not there to help these children. It was not opening schools for them. The church was practically, at that time, taking care of all the other needs of these people.
With no other education option, many refugees had to send their children to local Islamic schools.
It is a great problem for us, and very painful, that our children have to attend state schools and be subjected to Islamization. Without outside help, our schools will be unable to manage. We are quite simply losing young people, children. We are losing whole families. It's a form of programmized Islamization. Even in our schools, the children have to learn whole fragments of the Quran by heart, because it will be in their exams.
We have to understand the question of introducing Islam or Islamic or Quranic quotations in the education syllabus, like in mathematics, in geography, in history, and so forth. This is not happening by chance. This is a strategy of the government.
To provide the necessary education for the hundreds of thousands of refugee children and to prevent the loss of faith amongst the present and future generations, the Catholic Church quickly began to organize makeshift schools. The program soon became known as Save the Saveable.
The Save the Saveable program, school program, started back in 1986. It was started by His Eminence Cardinal Gabriel Zuberwako as a way of responding to the situation of many displaced people who are running from the south, from the east, and from the northern part of Sudan to the northern part of the country, mainly Khartoum.
Thanks to the financial support of international charitable organizations such as Aid to the Church in Need, the local church had the necessary financial resources enabling it to set up and run schools. The first schools were established on church grounds, built solely with refugee labour. The fact that parents did not have to pay for their children's education proved decisive for the poverty-stricken families. There are currently 200 Save the Saveable schools in Sudan, including 54 primary schools and 131 nursery schools. There are around 1,200 teachers, including 200 dedicated to religious education. However, due to the difficult financial situation, the Church has had to limit and reorganize its education commitments. In spite of constant difficulties, Catholic schools continue to operate as best they can. They maintain such a high standard of teaching that even Muslims enroll their children.
Yes, Muslims are accepting to send their children to our schools every year. In different schools, we have many Muslims in our schools. They are believing in education, first of all. And they are looking for the future, and they are looking where good education are. We pray before classes, and every day we used to pray even in the morning, and everything we are doing in the school normal. And the Muslims are doing with us.
What distinguishes the Save the Saveable programme is the fact that it also provides an opportunity for adult education for those parents who, because of the need to support their families, were unable to complete their schooling when they were young.
I joined the school for a number of reasons. Firstly, circumstances prevented one from studying in the morning. Apart from that, one can go to work in the morning. Secondly, it's cheap, less than a state school. Thirdly, a Catholic education is assured. If I finish the school, I will go to university to study nursing.
We estimate that about 1 million children benefited from this Save the Saveable program. Some studied and graduated up to university level. We might be talking of 200,000 people.
Because of the high educational standards and alternative programme, Catholic schools have attained a solid reputation amongst both students and parents. Concerned by the thought of well-educated Christians, the Khartoum authorities began closing Catholic schools on a massive scale in the 1990s.
More than half of our schools, which were founded to respond to these needs of the children, were broken by the government. It was practically forbidden because they said it was not allowed to open churches. And since all these schools literally were also used for worship because Christians were coming there to pray on Sunday, so the government got the pretext of trying to throw down the schools because you have opened churches illegally. So it was a bitter time of persecution that the church went through. But the church was there consistent, trying to respond to these needs.
On the 9th of January 2005, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was signed between the Islamic government from the north and the Sudan People's Liberation Army from the south. Paradoxically, running church schools in refugee camps has proved more difficult in times of peace than during the war. With the ending of the conflict, so did much of the foreign aid. Today, the Sudanese Catholic Church is unable to provide the necessary financial means for this education on its own.
Many of the donor agencies who were helping the church during all those years, difficult years, got an information, the peace agreement has been signed. We were helping you because of the war. Now the war is over. So please, we cannot help anymore. And so the resources began to shrink. It began to dwindle. And so it was impossible for the church to keep running so many institutions, so many schools at that scale with such big number.
Today, the number of children participating in these teaching programs has decreased dramatically. 5 years ago, there were still 70,000 girls and boys attending, but today there are less than 30,000 pupils within Khartoum and a further 2,500 outside Khartoum. Although part of the drop in numbers can be attributed to the return of some Christians to the south, sadly, the most common reason for taking students out of schools is poverty. The church, with a drop in external financial support, is no longer able to afford supporting the poorest 20 to 25% of students who cannot pay, and so the refugee parents take their children out. Schools are now being closed, not by the Muslim authorities, but by a local church, unable to continue to serve.
Remember that during all those 15 years, the church was not collecting a single penny from the child. And so it was depending exclusively on the external help. Now with the external help being cut, how could we run these schools? Without this Save the Saveable program, believe me, I do not know where else could our displaced people have been taught. People who came from the south, from the east, from the west, the marginalized people, the black people of the southern Sudan, where could they have been taught? Our history could have been different without this simple Save the Saveable program. So it was providential.
If there's a one Christian remaining here, we shall be with that Christian. The 99, which was left by the pastor in the desert, to follow the one who get lost, we shall do that. We shall remain run after the one who has been straying in the desert. That is our vision.